Hi everyone, it's TanyaMFK here with your 52 weeks of momentum lesson recap. We are in week 26. If this is your first time, welcome. I'm Tanya Marie Figueres Kreisinger, more easily known as TanyaMFK. I am a member of Benjamin Hardy's 52 weeks of momentum group, and I come here every week to just share what I'm learning, some highlights, so you can tag along and get a piece of your momentum on the way. This is in no way a substitute for the course. There's a lot of stuff I don't do for everyone here. I'm really just sharing my journey, what I'm learning, the nuggets that I think are awesome. It's an amazing course. And also, I'm clearly not Benjamin Hardy. So if you did miss out, definitely hang out, tag along, and then make sure to sign up next year. Okay? So as I mentioned, it is week 26, and it's, as always, the course is evolving. The methods are evolving. The way things are delivered to us are evolving. So the past week, we actually had several different trainings, videos, and things sent to us. And they were in the form of writing an obituary to 10xing and, another recording of a group call. So let's start by talking obituaries. Because let's be honest, that was what caught your attention the most as I just said that list, right? So, obituaries. We've done a lot of stuff in this group about vision, your 10-year vision, just looking at your life and in all different ways. And in the beginning of the group, in the beginning of the course, we visited the Stephen Covey's 80th birthday video, which really asks you to look at your 80th birthday, which the majority of us aren't anywhere near that. So it's a really far stretch to think ahead and ask yourself, who would be there that day? Who's hanging out? What are you doing? Where are you? What are people saying? As they hand you that cake or their gift and oh, I just, you've always been so great and whatever that is. What are they saying? What is it? And that was a big stretch. That was a different way to think about your life, think about what path you're laying and things that are going on. So this concept, right, isn't totally new to us, isn't totally new to think about it. So we've done a lot of this. And at this point now, we were encouraged to write our obituary. And I wasn't taken that off guard. I was like, okay, we've done this before. I expected it's going to be, one of those things, kind of like a Scrooge thing, right? You got Christmas past, Christmas present, Christmas future. And you look at it and you're like, oh, I don't like the way that is. And so you want to change a bunch of stuff. You have this aha moment. So I got it. I was like, okay, I get it. I get the reasoning behind this. But oh my God, did it not take me by surprise? And I just mean the results of doing this work. Wow. Just total game changer. So I know it may seem really kind of macabre at first, and I assure you, though, it has so much more to do with life than it does with death, at all. You're not writing gruesome details about how you die. You're writing the after part, right? The afterthought, what are people saying, right? And what is there? I have it here. James Joyce says, read your own obituary notice. They say you live longer, it gives you a second win and a new lease on life. And there's a story, totally true story, to illustrate that. I had no idea. I learned this the first time, and I think it's super awesome. So Alfred Nobel, he was the creator of dynamite. He woke up one day and found his obituary in the newspaper. So imagine that. You're like, oh, yeah, let's see what happened today. Oh, wait a minute. Tanya died. What do you mean? So that's what he saw. and it read like this. Dr. Alfred Nobel, who became rich by finding ways to kill more people faster than ever before, died yesterday. End sentence. So to clear up some confusion at first, it was his brother who had actually passed away. And they, brothers, similar last names, probably similar names. They mixed it up and were like, oh, it's that guy. I know that guy. Wrote the obituary. Bam. Besides that, let's look at the fact of he saw this. I'm going to read that one more time. Dr. Alfred Nobel, who became rich by finding ways to kill more people faster than ever before, died yesterday. Holy crap. That's the way he was going to be remembered. That was what they were going to say about him. That was the legacy he was leaving behind. whether that's what he thought or not. It wasn't accomplished businessman or great scientist created dynamite, something we've never seen before in this century. No, finding more ways to kill more people faster than before. Like, good Lord. Okay. So he decided to change it. He didn't like it. He was like, I don't like this. This is not what I'm trying to be remembered for. So he decided to change that. Now you're going to remember Alfred as the guy that started the Nobel Foundation and that whole Nobel Peace Prize thing, right? What a legacy that is. Totally different situation. So if you are in need of some inspiration, write your obituary. Sounds super crazy. Do it. I have written, 90-day goals. I've done 10-year visions, 25-year vision. I did the 80th birthday thing. I'm in mastermind groups. I'm in all of those things, right? Like my visions, my goals, my stuff has been written, evaluated in so many ways. And all of them have been very, very beneficial in their own ways. This is just, it's a totally different approach. And honestly, I feel like it's a totally different result. Because it's not just these goals based, like, did I accomplish the things, right? Did I do, like, it's, where you look at your 10-year vision and you're like, well, like, how can I get this thing done as quickly by then? Am I going to write a book within that time? Am I going to do that? But there's something more about this, like, finality of this, and also not looking at it. In 10 years, you'll be there to look and say, do I like where this ended up? But when it's in the hands of the interpretation of others, no, we can't change that. We don't have a direct say in that, but we definitely can be more conscious of like the legacy and the mark that we're leaving, right? So here are the questions. So these are the questions that we were asked to think about. Take 30 to 60 minutes, it can be a whole thing too. Like we want to get deep in thought on this, but if nothing else, 30 to 60 minutes. I did an hour just because it was like way different than I thought it was going to be. And answer these following questions. So what are the major accomplishments in your life, right? You've died now, okay? And what are they saying? What are the major accomplishments in your life? What are you remembered for, right? So again, your memory and someone else's memory, totally different. So what is everyone else remembering? One thing that your friends and close family would say, but on a whole, when they're like writing that in the newspaper or whatever it is, what are you remembered for? What are the top things that people are like, she had great fashion, or which maybe it was, but whatever it is, right? Like, what was it? What were the main things that they are compelled to say, like, this is what you're remembered for? What did you truly stand for? What is something that they say, like, that is the thing that this person was about? What did you accomplish between your death and where you are at this present moment? So right now, from now until that time, like what would be accomplished? What are you saying would be accomplished? What were the last 10 years of your life like? That was a whole other thing. Like I thought about the goals and the things I've reached, but I never thought like, how would I live out like those last 10 years? What would be the, like, I arrived, I'm living the life that I absolutely 1000% want my last years on earth to be. What were they like? What was I doing? What was I jet setting about? Was I gardening? Was I with family and friends? What was I doing? What are they? And what are you most proud of? So now you're back to your opinion again. Like, what are you most proud of? When you look at that, what was the thing? You'd be like, wow, out of all of those things, this was the thing. And how different would your obituary be today from what your ideal obituary would be? So as you're writing this and you're not, guy who's trying to kill as many people, as fast as possible with dynamite versus what you want it to be, right? Nobel Peace Prize. How different are they? So if you want to go the extra mile, you can write 2 obituaries. This was mentioned as well. So if you're really into it, you can write like what would happen if it happened right now. What would that look like? What would be the legacy now? What would be the mark? What would be said? What would you be remembered for? And then compare that to an ideal playtime that you'd like to move on and what that legacy would be. So like looking at this, it's a way I never looked at any of these things before. It took a whole different concept for your Nobel cause. I didn't even think about noble, right? You're noble. Your noble cause. Your noble cause. And noble cause is something we talk about a lot in business. For branding and all these different things. It's like, what's that bigger thing? What's that deeper thing? What's the noble cause? And, as a entrepreneur, it's something that you think about a lot as well, because it's part of your why, right? But like on an even grander scale, on this like business, family, totally just on a bigger, like me as a person, like what is my noble cause? It was a whole different way. I don't know if I can stress that enough, but it was so different. So I highly, highly recommend it. It's just, it was just amazing. By the way, I chose 98 for when I'm going to die. So now I'm really like compelled to make that happen and do what it takes to get to that age. Like, I don't know if I need to be like over 100. I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm up for it. I'm game, but I was like, oh, I want to be realistic, but I want to like really push it. Like, I don't want to be in my 80s or something. Like, I want to like really push that limit. So I picked 98. But now I'm like, I got to do that. Like, the numbers aren't always there, for me. So I need to make sure that like I do what it takes to get there. So that was a nice, interesting thing as well. But amazing exercise, right? Like, okay, enough, Tanya. That was enough exercise. So next topic, all right, let's shake off the obituary topic. We revisited the 10X concept again. Now, this is something that's been threaded out like this whole course that we're learning. And this really came from Peter Thiel, I think is how it's pronounced. He's a billionaire. And he posed the question, let me see. How can you attain your 10-year goals in the next 6 months? Like, what? Like, again, like if you've been following along, you've done that 10-year vision. How could you do that in the next 6 months? Like, right? Some of those, of course, there's going to be things that are like, oh, well, it's just time-wise. There's some restrictions, right? There are going to be some things that just don't fit within that. However, it's a mind shift. It's a mind shift of like, if that was the time you were given, what would you have to do differently? How would your whole approach change? And it's not about doing more work, hustling more, working harder. It's about the results. Because now you don't have just work harder because you have like so much you're trying to do in 6 months. So you really have to think like, how would I get these results? Right. So it's a whole thing in your head. So here are the questions to really contemplate for this thing. And it's not just a mind shift. This isn't a reasonable question, because there are things that you may not have ever thought about it that way. Because you were like, okay, 10 years. Like 10 years feels safe. It feels comfortable. It feels reasonable. It's far enough ahead that it's like not overwhelming, but it's close enough that it doesn't feel like, 30 years or something like, oh, that's, who knows what's going to happen by then. It feels reasonable. However, if we don't give ourselves a chance to like imagine it or contemplate the possibilities, we'll never know what possibly could be actually done in that short amount of time. How could we really push it? Because we just accepted like 10 years was the limit we were given. Someone said, do this exercise. You said, okay. And you put it within 10 years and said, yeah, this 5-year mark sounds good. 7-year. What about 6 months? What about 6 months? Like, think about it. So again, here are the questions that you should contemplate as you're trying this process out. How would you completely change up your approach? I mentioned that. Like, holy crap. Okay, if I really have 6 months to do all this, what would I need to do differently? What role and identity would you need to assume in order to do what you would need to do? What's holding you back from living to a higher level right now? What are the key elements of that 10-year vision? Right? So if you look at that 10-year vision, and there's like maybe some little specifics here and here, but what are the biggest elements? Like, say it's like owning some big house, right? But maybe 3 years from now isn't the time to start thinking about the more specifics of that. Maybe getting that house, this giant mansion or something between now and 6 months isn't what's going to happen, but what could be done about that now in the next 6 months? What concepts, what thought process, savings, whatever it is, location that you want it, could be figured out or thought about in the next 6 months? Like key elements of those, what's like overarching themes and what could be done in the next 6 months? What are key experiences that you want to have? So out of that, what are some real specific experiences that you want to have and you could do perhaps in the next 6 months? What are the key accomplishments you want to have? Where do you really want to be? How do you want your relationships to be? And who do you want to be? So as we've learned before, going through this, 10x is a lot easier than 2x, because 2x, we usually just double the effort, double the same way that we got there. But 10x forces us to look at it from a completely different way. It allows us to drop off any distractions because we're so focused on such a large goal. And if some of you, I'm sorry, if it's your first time 10x, basically 10 times the amount. So if your goal is to make, you made $1,000, you want to 2x it, right? So that's $2,000. But what about 10xing it? How do you get that to $10,000? How do you get your $10,000 to $100,000? Like, just totally out of your comfort zone, out of your element. But there's some science behind it that really actually we can accomplish these a lot of the time. It's just a shift of our mindset, and it's different when we kind of look at the small fry. The effort is minimal, and we, like I said, we just repeat what it is. But we're 10x. We have to like really focus, be like, well, gosh, if that's what I have to do, then it's got to be this way, and all this stuff. I can't waste time with that because like this goal is over here, right? So that's the 10x thing. Whew. One more thing, right? I told you we had 3 things. It was like a lot to learn, okay? So lastly, we were flies on the wall again for another group coaching call. We are going to be the most enlightened, smartest flies ever. I'm just going to highlight a couple things from that, from what we talked about. The first question from what they talked about. The first question was someone asked, like, we're doing all this stuff. We've touched upon like eating. We've talked about, a lot of the mental and the mindset. He asked, are we going to explore like kind of more spiritual concepts like connections and love and stuff like that as we go through this group? And Benjamin Hart said, yes, absolutely. He was excited to hear that someone, wants to know and explore that more. And at the same time, and the reason I bring this up at a highlight is because he also mentioned that really, all of this stuff, right, is part of spiritual work. And he mentioned this quote from the book, As a Man Thinketh. And it says, when a man makes his mind pure, he no longer desires impure food. And it's really just a lovely statement of how it's all connected, right? Like you might be over here like focusing on a pure mind and whatever that is. It's like positivity or, not wanting angry or, hurting people or something. And you're working over there. But when you've done that, like it affects the rest of you where you're like, oh, I don't want that horrible thing that's going to, not be good for my body or wreak havoc, or I'm not going to feel so great afterwards. Like all of a sudden, when you focus on one area over here, it actually takes apart the other area. So it's that the pure mind affects the physical, right? Like it's all connected. So I thought that was just a really cool thing that he shared. The food you consume, the people you surround yourself with, it all impacts your spirituality. It's all spiritual. So I loved that. Another question was how to deal with life's unpredictability when you're trying to reach a goal, right? Which is like all of us, I'm sure, like I have this lovely little plan. Oh my gosh, life's happening. How do you deal with it? How do you set goals, and when life gets in the way? So this question was obviously approached with like a lot of discussion of planning and planning options and things specific to this person's, life situation. But if any of you guys follow me at TanyaMFK, then you know that I wholeheartedly use the block scheduling system and specifically use it because it incorporates flexibility, reality into a schedule, and you can set like realistic and attainable goals. So I used to dig my heels into the ground for dealing with change, right? And one of these days I'm going to tell the story, but I used to have a minute by minute schedule. Like I used to work in research, and this was, I worked a lot. I was working 16-hour days. I had a very minimal amount of time to come home and take care of home stuff and spend time with my husband. So I would make a minute by minute schedule, like literally the moment time that we needed to leave the office from the time we'd get home. And there were bathroom breaks set into it. Like that's how ridiculous it was. So of course, if something threw that off, like perhaps a phone call, right? Because back then we used phones and people would call you. And I mean, that wasn't planned. And that would send a couple minutes off that schedule. Everything would be a mess. Oh my God, I would freak out. That doesn't work. Okay, by the way. And like I said, one day I'll tell the whole story because it was insane. I was insane. I did not deal with change very well because I had such a strict schedule. I had to, and this was the way that it was going to be successful, whatever the thing was. Well, my first husband died of cancer, and that was not in my schedule. And I learned in a very, very difficult way that flexibility is something you have to learn to deal with and adapt with, or you will be fighting your life all the time, right? You will always be the victim. You will always have the why is life getting me thing, right? So you have to really accept change, go with the flow, and have a backup plan for those things when life happens, right? So if you're dealing with this with your day-to-day tasks, comment below, shoot me a message, whatever it is. And we're going to do some teaching on that block schedule system because it makes a huge difference in balancing your calendar in reality and not just for for both personal and business life, right? Because they are intertwined, right? No matter what, they're intertwined. So again, that was a tangent I hadn't planned on going on, but really like that was, planning for the unpredictability of life is life. Right? That's the part is that when we expect it to be the same, life goes like this, right? The only constant you can bank on is that it's always going to be different. That's the one thing you can always say, oh, I know it's going to change. So when you dig your heels in, you're like, it has to stay this way. Everything's what I like now. It needs to stay this way. And then it changes and you're like, why is it changing? You're such a jerk, life. And it's like, wait, what do you mean? That's what I do. I change. You're the one who's like wants to hold it this way. It was never promised to us like that, right? So what's better is when you're like up on the high and you're like, wow, this is really nice. I like it. But it's going to get bad. It's not always going to be here, So then when it goes down, you're not like, oh my God, what do you mean? It's so terrible. You're like, all right, yeah, I knew this was going to happen. And that's okay. That's okay because we'll be here. But I also know we're going to come right back up. And come back down. And now all of these moments are like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. Life will always be this way. Oh my God, what do you mean it's terrible? Oh my God, like you're not doing this. You're riding the wave. Like, oh my gosh, the analogy works. Okay. Anyway, again, sorry, that was a tangent. But as you're doing that, besides that point, the other thing that I thought was really important that was brought up in this questioning and conversation was that as you look at all these little things, right? Like what can you change? Going back to an issue of like scheduling, right? Like, well, I just can't find this time and I have this and I have that. And, well, can you change this? Can you change that? Like, no, this has to be like that. We really have to focus then on what can be done, right? Because if we're always looking at what can't be done, we're not going to find the solutions. So what can be done? And if you're really, really finding yourself at a standstill, what most of us tend to forget is to look at some of the big immovable objects. So sometimes, we look at all these little things. We're like, there's just no way it would work. If I'm living here and this is my job, like there's just no way around it. But rarely do we stop and say, well, can I change my job? Should I move? Because that stuff feels crazy. That stuff's like, whoa, wait, I wasn't looking at that. I was trying to work around it. But depending on what we're trying to accomplish, what we want to get to, what we truly want in life, then those are things that we need to consider. And rarely do we. Those are things we just we assume as immovable, but a lot of times they actually very much are. So again, I really liked that was brought up. I liked that it was like, but what about this? And it was like, whoa, I didn't really think about that. Like that, maybe, and is it uncomfortable? All these different things like, oh my gosh. But again, what matters most to you? What is the biggest thing, right? Is it some uncomfortability and something new happening that you're not familiar with, or this thing that you want to obtain, right? And it's up to you, right? It's up to you to decide. No one can decide that for you. What is the most important? So again, I loved that. I thought that was an awesome thing. That's why I bring it up. sorry about the tangent. There was one more question. The other question was, and this one will be really quick, was someone asking about their morning routine. They said, they looked at all the different things in the morning routine and all the options and like great things to kind of set for this beautiful morning, to get into that, that mindset. And they were like, but when I'm done, when I set it up, it's going to be like a really long time. Like, I don't have that kind of time to do this every morning. And so then they were like, well, what do I do? How do I pick what's important? And he said, what is the point? Like, what is the point of the morning routine? And really the ultimate point of it is to get into a peak state, right? To frame yourself for the day. So it's really easy to get caught up in the checklist. Like, did I do all these things? Oh, this is the perfect morning. And in many ways, I'm sure it can be. But again, life's unpredictable. Life happens. So when the time comes, if the point is to get into a peak state, what things, when time falls away, things change, what are the things that we can grab onto or hold on to that will still do that job in whatever moment we find ourselves in? All right, so that's what it comes down to. That's what you choose. That's what you figure out. So if journaling is the thing that sets your mind, your mind for that day, if, the exercise and meditation is what sets it, even if exercise, meditation, journaling, yoga, all of them are like the ideal morning, sometimes life happens, right? So the thing is in regards to that question, how do you do? You don't always get to do all of it. You got to move and be flexible, be fluid with life and do it. Ben said himself that he doesn't always have the mornings that he wants. He's traveling, he's getting speaking gigs, he's doing all these great things. So there are times that he can only grab his journal while he's in a taxi, right? Or he can only do a quick workout, or it's not the hour, it's 30 minutes, whatever it is. So, hello, Benjamin Hardy's human too. That's nice to know. And also, like, that's what it is, right? It's not about letting it go altogether. It's just about grasping the thing that is going to do the job, which is to get you into a peak state so you are at your best as you function through that day, right? That's the key. So again, those were the highlights. Those are the things that I thought were really important to bring up. And yeah, it was a lot. I know it was a long one, guys, but he's giving us a lot of information. So this is like your big 6-month like sandwich. And I hope that you found some value in that. Try the obituary thing. I know it's probably the weirdest thing that someone has said to you today, but try it out. I guarantee you it's just going to have some like aha moments for you. If you want to take some of these concepts and really learn how to bring them into your business life, your entrepreneurial journey, definitely come and check me out at TanyaMFK on Facebook and Instagram. And then click subscribe, and you'll be notified when our next lesson, 52 weeks of momentum lesson recap comes up. And we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for hanging out. Bye.